Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Across the Cloud series, which is where we open the floor to EU Cloud CoC members to share a bit about their journey in joining the code's ecosystem, as well as going through its adherence process. My name is Gabriela Mercuri. I'm Managing Director of Scope Europe. And for those who aren't familiar, Scope acts as the accredited monitoring body of the EU Cloud CoC, as well as its secretariat. And today I'm thrilled to have a chat with Jonathan Keane. He's Head of International Legal at Figma. So first, welcome, Jonathan.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'll already segue to my first question. Very keen to hear your thoughts here. You guys been members for a few years now of the EU Cloud CoC, and the code is really a benchmark if you're talking about co-regulation, right? And then, of course, especially in the privacy environment, this was the first tool of its kind to become approved by European data protection authorities and has been operational, legally operational for a few years now. Can you share a little bit of your input, of your views on the importance of having such co-regulatory initiatives, and how does it help you on a day-to-day, basically?
So a little bit more about my role. I head up the international legal team here at Figma. As you described, what does that mean? Basically, I look after everything outside of North America. So that's quite a big geographical area, LATAM, EMEA, and JPAC. Lots of different regulatory systems, lots of different laws, as you can imagine. So when I was the first legal hire outside the US, we looked at how we could build trust with our European customers. It's a highly regulated market, and the way that they address things like privacy is very different to the US, or certainly was at the time. So having an independent, verifiable standard, which is offered by the EU Cloud Code of Conduct, was something we thought would be very helpful to build that trust with our European customer base.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And indeed, I mean, first of all, how challenging, how complex it must be to have to cover all these areas. And I can only imagine also how many overlapping requirements. There's so much redundancy as well, and you were constantly doing this exercise of trying to optimize the compliance efforts, right? And trying to make sure that all these different pieces of the puzzle can work together. And based on that, so looking at the operational efforts, that the day-to-day compliance exercise, can you maybe give some insights on the adherence process itself, and how is it tailored into your existing compliance exercises?
Yeah, so I think you're right. There are lots of different regulatory ecosystems within that international remit, but GDPR is still the gold standard when it comes to data protection. So that is what we're aiming for. Generally, if we're meeting GDPR requirements, then we're going to be in a good place as we move into new markets. And what's impressive about the EU Cloud Code of Conduct is that it's the only code that's got official kind of approval. So the fact that it's EDPB approved is a massive kind of tick in the box for us, because it means we can go to customers and point to something that's got legal status rather than just like an industry code with no legal kind of weight behind it. One of the big reasons we chose the EU Cloud Code of Conduct as well is the flexibility, because Figma is a very innovative business. We are always kind of looking at product development. We have released multiple new products over the last 12 months. The fact that we don't have to go and reinvent the wheel every time we engage with you is fantastic. So we can just add new service lines onto our existing adherence without going through all of the same kind of base level question and answer that we would have to do with other codes or in other scenarios. So yeah, the fact that we can just add new services on at pace as the business develops is fantastic. There's also a lot of overlap here, right, with SOC 2 and the ISO standards. We are a lean team, I would say, both legal and our compliance team in the US. So any way that we can consolidate those efforts and not have to go through multiple processes providing the same information each time. So again, very helpful having a code that has so much overlap with industry accepted cybersecurity standards, etc.
Thank you, Jonathan. And you touched upon several important elements here. Focusing a bit on the flexibility aspect, which this is what we tried very, very hard to implement in several fronts and different dimensions when we were designing the code in the first place. First, you mentioned how the code is the only instrument for a SaaS provider like Figma, and indeed this was extremely challenging because the cloud environment is very diverse. But we knew very well the importance of harmonizing those technical and organizational measures across all cloud service layers. So to be able to comprise infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, to have this unique tool that could be the blueprint, the reference, the standard for GDPR compliance and the cloud. And in this regard, we also talked about not reinventing the wheel. So the code has a mapping basically to international standards, international cybersecurity standards. The idea was to leverage existing efforts and make sure that compliance teams could look at the work that they have done already and implement it and leverage it and don't need to, again, it's so challenging, so complex. There's so many regulatory requirements that they need to be looking at. So this was an important exercise for us to make it as workable as possible and not to reinvent the wheel, especially if you have good standards out there that are widely recognized and implemented across the industry. So based on that, could you give us a little bit of your view on this structure of the code, this framework and this flexible approach to incorporate existing efforts, but also to look ahead and potentially develop also the code as new requirements kick in and so forth?
Sure. So the code's been extremely helpful filling that gap between the why and the what, which is where GDPR is very helpful. It addresses the how. It's like, how do you take that law and you build it into something practical and something that kind of reflects the technology that you're providing. And I think having those different modules that apply to SaaS providers versus infrastructure, very, very helpful, because huge difference in those business models and huge differences in the risk areas that customers and users care about, depending on where you are in that cloud ecosystem. So having a code that is like targeted just at the cloud providers is very, very helpful for us as well. And because there's a base level of knowledge about how the technology works as well, which makes the adherence process a lot smoother than dealing with kind of a general privacy authority, for example. And so there's been a huge wave of new digital regulation in Europe, as you know, over the last 3 years. So data privacy, data protection can't live on its own in a silo. We've got the DSA, DORA, the EU Data Act, the EU AI Act. Alignment on kind of core standards across those regulations is really important. And I think that's what cloud service providers want from regulators, is to have consistency and harmonization, not to have multiple different definitions of cloud service providers for each regulation, for example. And codes like this play a really important role in driving that alignment across industry and being the intersection between the industry and the regulators, which is a really important part of making effective regulation, because neither party, I think, can do that on their own. And the results of bad regulation are going to play out for the user ultimately. So I think what Scope does is be that bridge between those two.
And I was thinking also, what about the specific needs? I mean, you are dealing with all these different regions and regulatory requirements, and that also comes with different customer bases, of course, that have different needs, and considering the latest developments also on Figma's side in terms of structuring and so forth, could you give us some insights on how the code can help specific customer demands, and how does it fit into this whole strategy, I guess, global strategy?
Yeah, totally. So we became a public company last year, which was very exciting. But with that status and with the greater scrutiny you have from a compliance and regulatory perspective, having an independent, legally approved code for the EU when it comes to data protection and to a certain extent cybersecurity as well is really key for us in building credibility and trust with our European customer base. There is a lot more kind of disclosure obligations on you as a public company. You're held to a higher standard across lots of surface areas of regulation. The fact that we can now point to the scope, European Cloud Code of Conduct, and customers can independently verify that by searching your register rather than just taking our word for it, again, helps build that trust and introduces a layer of objectivity to our compliance. It's not just us saying we do this, it's us saying we do this, and that's independently verified by you guys. So yeah, it's been a really useful tool in helping us navigate the increasingly complex compliance journey that we have onboarding new customers within the EU.
Absolutely, and yeah, you brought up the public register, which is, it's a key feature to build that trust, to have that transparency and accountability. So for cloud customers, they can go into the public register of the code. They can, everything is transparent, is out there. You can see the services that were declared against the code. You have all the details on a public report of adherence and yearly renewed. So it's a quite robust assessment process. It's what we believe had to be done if you're looking at a data-driven industry such as cloud. And it was, as you said, also is the kind of commitment that needs to be a multi-stakeholder effort. So we needed the industry, the data protection authorities, the cloud users to really come together and settle on strong, robust technical and organizational measures to create that trust, especially if you're looking at complex technologies such as cloud, which can be like a black box for most of customers. And talking about complex technologies, of course, we have the usual suspect, AI. I was wondering if you could give us also some insights on how this exercise within the privacy environment, so how a code of conduct, creating those standards for cloud, for GDPR, how this exercise can help us, what are the lessons learned from this exercise when we're looking at AI implementation, right? And I know Figma has a quite diverse set of products, and how does this all play out?
Yeah, so you're right. AI is a big part of our strategy at Figma, and it is across all of our product lines, and it's something that we are putting a lot of time and focus into, not just from the product development angle, but how can we responsibly deploy AI in a way that our customers are comfortable with. So having an established market standard here, and I think that's really key, because I don't like general references to best practice or what other people in the market are doing. It's too vague. You need a specific set of technical standards mapping to the legal requirements in order for that to mean anything. And having a single unified code, and whether that's driven by regulation or industry groups or a code that bridges the gap between the two of them, is essential. Otherwise, what you see is each company having its own code, And having looked at many code of conducts over the years, that is not the right way to go, because it doesn't actually drive any protection on either side. It just creates a load of overlapping and contradictory obligations and codes that don't fit the type of services that you provide. So having someone like Scope who knows the cloud industry and therefore knows what parts of kind of driving an ethical AI governance program actually apply, rather than talking in generalities, is really important. So yeah, if you could bring out an AI code, I think that would be fantastic.
We'll try our best. Thank you so much, Jonathan. This has been extremely insightful. Really appreciate you having the time. And yeah, to our audience, thank you for following this episode, and look forward to seeing you the next time.